So I've done it other way. Yeah, so today we're going to talk about how can we change our expectations and perceptions when we're over 50. And I'm very delightful that I put a panel together from different backgrounds who I'll introduce shortly to you in a minute before I hand over to each of them to explain themselves a little bit further. I'm recording the session and I hope to upload that at a later stage on our YouTube channel from Aging 2. And I will email that out to the attendees today. Apart from that, as I said before, please stay muted. If you have a question for the panel, so what we would like to do is after each question, give you an opportunity to ask a question on that theme. And please put it in the chat box. So I will be monitoring the chat box during the session. As I say, quick introduce the panel before I hand over to them. We have Wize Pizzoni. He is working as one of the things he does at Nottingham University, and he's actually working beyond his retirement age. And we will hear more about his path and the career changes he has been making during his long-standing career. One of the other panelists is Tatiana Rowsen. She is working at Henley Business School, and she research takes a life course perspective, exploring life, work, and career transitions. And she's actually focusing, if I'm correct, the past few years on midlife specifically. And last but not least, we have Ingun Bol from Wize Move Society, and she set up this network for people over 50s. It's an international network for people to network, have fun, change careers, and also focusing on the mental and health well-being. And she will, of course, answer all the questions together with Wize and Tatiana about our theme about over 50s. So with further ado, let's start with the first question. One of the first question I would like to start with, and we did discuss that before. No, I'm doing it incorrectly. Sorry, hand over to you, Wize, to introduce yourself properly before I jump into the question. My apologies. Wize, over to you, please.
No problem. Hello, everyone. It's a great pleasure to have a chat with everyone about this very interesting subject. So very briefly, I had a 35-year career in industry, working primarily in the energy sector. And then at the age of 51, interestingly, I found myself having to change direction because the company that I was with decided to do some fairly major changes, which wasn't a surprise because I'd actually been involved in a lot of that myself in terms of restructuring the company. So after that, I had to make some changes, and I've worked in the educational sector, I've worked in the marine sector, and I've worked in several others. And today, I guess 15, 16 years on from that time when I had the major change in my career, I now have a portfolio of activities that I'm involved in, partly working at Nottingham University as a professor in the Chemical Environmental Engineering Department. I'm a executive search consultant in the energy sector. I'm a career coach in a range of business schools as well, and I'm on the board of several charities. So I'm looking forward to actually being involved in answering some of the questions that we have from you, and really trying to say a little bit about, I suppose, what my perception might be of some of the key factors that are involved. Thank you again.
Thank you, Wize, for your introduction. Can I hand over to you, Tatiana, to introduce yourself to the audience, please?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Nicolette, for inviting me. Thank you, everyone, for being here with us. So I'm a psychologist, and I was trained to be a clinical psychologist many moons ago, always being interested in retirement and aging from very early on. I never worked as a clinical psychologist, so I spent most of my life working in learning and development, management development programs until I made a switch into academia, followed my PhD. So my PhD looked into retirement, but I realized that things, when you retire, it's too late to talk about what's happening. Things start much earlier on in life. So therefore, my interest in midlife, because it's a crucial moment where everything can change. So my research today focuses a lot on midlife with a view to understand what happens later on in life. So pleasure to join you today, Nicolette.
Thank you, Tatiana. And over to you, Ingun, to introduce yourself and perhaps also a little bit about Wize Move Society.
Yes, thank you, Nicolette, also for inviting me. It's really great to be here with all these people that are interested in this topic. So fantastic. Yes, I originally am an engineer. I'm a city architect. I worked in the IT business for almost 20 years. And I always say I did all the things. I did the glass ceiling thing, and I did, all the things that you need to be doing in this corporate environment, but I was never really happy. So quit that job when I was 42 and started my own business. I'm 61 right now. So that is also, it feels like we're really moving into that older age. But anyhow, I'm an entrepreneur since. I just love to start new businesses and make them successful. That is also what I do by supporting others to do the same, to find their purpose, and really not only to find their purpose, but guide them to take the next step. I'm a real community builder. Next to the Wize Move Society, I have an NGO, the Female Wave of Change. That's an organization that is now represented in almost 50 countries, and tomorrow and the day after we have a huge global conference, so really excited about that. But what I say, I'm a community builder. I love to bring people together, to build bridges, to create new things. I really think from scratch. I always say, don't fight the old, but create the new. And that is what I just love doing, is to create and to act, not only to share more about it. Also, especially right now in this whole online world, you see a lot of people doing speeches and doing training and things like that. For me, it's always like, okay, now I know that there is a situation we need to act on. So let's act, let's do things. And that is really what I've been doing. Have been thinking about that 50+ generation since I turned 50. That was a time in the economy that a lot of people in my age group, they were fired, they were laid off. We're kind of, so what is happening? What do I need to do? Like Vince, when you're 52 and you have been working for the same company or for the same organization for many, many years, people felt a little bit lost and didn't know where to start. Well, I felt like, oh, there are so many opportunities. So what can we do? Start something. But, life happens, and that female way of change happened, became far more successful than I ever imagined. So when I turned 60, I said, okay, now is really the moment that I need to start working with this group, because I saw that the challenges that not just this group is facing, but especially also what society, but also organizations, what they are facing, if in regards to this age group, that I felt like we really need to work with it. And I do it my way. I build a community. I get people on board who can work with everyone, have a clear vision of what we want to accomplish. And yes, it is about fun. Yes, it is about healthy aging. Yes, it is about building new networks, about new knowledge and things like that. But also, especially, and that is, what I love, creating new things, creating new opportunities together. And that's a Wize Move Society.
Thank you very much, Ingun. All the enthusiasm, it really energizes the group, dare I say it. And I love what you just said, don't fight the old, embrace the new. So I think that's already a very good slogan to start off with. So thank you for that. Yes, so now I can actually finally drop in the first question. And that is about, as I said, we talked about it briefly when we talked about this whole session. So how do you see our society is perceiving older adults at work, and what's your own experience? Perhaps, I'm not sure who would like to start. Maybe I'll just point out, like maybe I'll start with you, Tatiana, and then you can hand over to Vince or Ingun.
Okay, great. Let's start. It's an interesting and a difficult question, Nicolette, to answer. How does society view the old? Of course, you have all sorts of discourses going on, but the reality is there's a lot of the perception of aging as a social problem still. We moved on, we moved a long way away from the sort of the Victorian times here in the UK, where we had all a different setup of life, but aging is still viewed as a social problem. And we look at the headlines, we look at the news, and all we see is the pensions, the social care, is this and that element, and that creates a negative attitude towards aging. So we all, as a society, we are aging. I think that this year we have the largest number of people hitting the age 55 in the UK. No other generation will have a higher number, no other generation alive will have a higher number of 55s than we do this year. Still, we see aging as a social problem. So it is happening around us, but the mindset is not changing as fast as we are changing as a society. And that's
one. Yeah. So the mindset, as you said, like the society is changing and we're still looking at our old values, that someone at a certain age is perceived as old. Okay.
That's right. I would love to hear all this experience. I will pass the ball to Vince.
Thank you. Vince?
Thank you, Tatiana. So I think probably it varies in terms of how people perceive, and my experience is it varies. So at one end of the spectrum, you've got organizations that look on you once you reach a certain age and think you're old and past it, and you're better off going to grass, and you're not going to bring anything. And I think at the other end of the spectrum, the more enlightened organizations view you as someone who actually can bring a huge wealth of experience to their organization. So all those 30, 40 years that you've got actually may be of value. I think a lot of this is partly how people view you, but also I think there's a bit about yourself in this. So we're probably going to get into a lot of this later on, and Tatiana's already started touching on this, but you can't go into this thing assuming that you can live on past glories. Okay, so I can't go into a role and think, oh, I was brilliant at this before, surely you're going to take me on and you think I'm great. No, actually, people don't judge you necessarily on your past. They judge you on what you're going to do today and the future. Okay, so don't live on past glories. I think the other thing that often happens, which puts employers off about people of a certain age, and that is this thing about, well, this is the way we always used to do it. Well, the reality is we're in a changing world. It's probably changing even quicker now than it ever has in sort of my lifetime. So we have to adapt. We've got to be flexible. We've got to be open-minded. And I think, again, this is something that we have to do to try and change the perception. Otherwise, you're going to get a lot of people thinking, we're past it, we're stuck in the past, we've got nothing new to bring, and frankly, we're better off without you because you're just going to be a pain in the neck in the organization. So I think it's a two-way thing. I think it's how we're perceived, but almost more importantly is how we want people to perceive us. And I think that's where we need to show we're open-minded, we've got new ideas, and we're prepared to adapt to change. And I guess we're probably going to talk a lot more about that as we move on.
Thank you, Vince. Last but not least, Ingun?
Yes, well, I love it that Vince and Tatiana already touched on so many issues. I'm not going to talk about that because they're right. One thing that I want to add to that is of course, it is about how society perceives this age group. But it is also important how this age group perceives itself, how all these individuals perceive themselves, because that is also what the the energy, if we have our role models that we see that people are doing fantastic things, that is also that we feel like, okay, I can do that as well. And, I'm just going to share a couple of examples. Yesterday, I was talking to Jen Hively. We're going to have her in our Tuesday afternoon session next week. She's 89, and maybe she is going to retire a bit, she said, step down a bit. She is still so active. She's going to move to the other side of the country in the US because she wants to be closer with her family. And there's also a lot of work to be done. I love it when she mentions things like that. There is Han. We had him in one of our meetings. He's 84, and he has developed an app that is fantastic, really about caring. It is a support system for people who do want to live longer in their own home to be independent. But he's 84, active, getting the funds in, doing the tech stuff. There's Paul, the story of Paul, this guy from California who started his first business at 66 because he was fired at 64 in the United States. He hadn't yet any retirement fund built, so he just needed to work, but he has never been happier. He's now mid-70s, he's not going to retire at any time. Very successful business. We have Frances, who just joined our community 4 weeks ago, and she's already, she came completely depressed, felt, unneeded and things like that. And then it was like, this is me doing to myself, let's do this. And now she's this vibrant person and starting her own coaching business. And, and there are many more examples of this. If we have enough people in the community, in our country, to show, and also in organizations, to show that it is all possible, that if we show this energy, if we show this positivity, this activity, then, I think the whole society will change their mindset. And yes, is there still a lot of ageism? Is there still discrimination on aging? Absolutely.
That's interesting. It's almost like we're already getting into our second question with all your examples, Ingun. So yeah, it's interesting. As Tatiana said, the mindset is not there yet, where society is actually moving on. So that's interesting. How can we keep pace on that? And it's true what Finn said. Like, we have to actually show, as the, between brackets, older generation, that we are adapting to change and are open-minded. And Ingun, you gave some really good examples that actually age doesn't matter. That you can start a new business even if you're in your 80s. So yeah, definitely. It's interesting. In the meantime, while you were talking, there were, something came into the chat from a man who was 77. He said, "Oh, I think I'm in the wrong Zoom room because I'm already retired." So what pity he didn't stay. You might have been encouraged to. Yeah, it's not only about retirement, but yeah, hey ho, this of course his perceivement. Anyway, yeah, so you gave it a little bit away, Ingun, so perhaps maybe you can start with answering this question. What do you think is needed to change the perspective of the aging population? And apart from the examples you mentioned, perhaps if you think also a little bit, what could government or policies do in that perspective?
Well, I think for one, we need awareness of what is going on right now in the world, that this group is growing so fast that, we do have huge challenges if governments or organizations or society do not open up for this age group. So I think there's a lot of awareness that is being created, needs to be created, and a lot of like the work that Tatiana is doing a lot of research. That is very important, because we need to be aware of what is going on. We need to be aware of this, the situation that people do end up, if they do retire at 65 or 66, 67. I just heard last week that in Canada, that's of course another country, but 90% of the people who retire in poverty. this is a huge issue. This is a huge issue. You know, it cannot be that government, that politics, that organizations, that we close our eyes for what is happening. So we really do need to work on awareness. And I'll leave some of the topics up to the others. I think they're really good in government and things of politics. It's not really my thing. But for instance, organizations as well, you know, if everyone leaves the workforce right now, and I know in the UK, this is a huge issue. If everyone who turns 65 or older leaves the workforce right now, we are not able to replace those people by the younger ones. And not only not replace them, but that knowledge, that wisdom, that experience, there will be a knowledge drain from organizations. There will be a skills crisis, you know, if this is really going to happen. So if I just zoom in on organizations, they really need to welcome this age group in their organization and, you know, change procedures and all these rules that are there, that there are more, there is more created for people to retire, you know, step by step, or, you know, come back, or, you know, for a couple of hours or a couple of days per week. But especially in the organizations, a lot of work needs to be done, and also to really start working together as a intergenerational workforce, a multi-generational workforce, however you want to call it, because that is important. We need to keep those 65 and older people in the organization for many reasons.
Thank you very much, Ingun. No, that's a very, very good point. Kijago, I see you have raised your hand. I did say if you can put it in the chat box, but I'm quite happy if you have a question directly to one of the panelists. I hope the panelists don't mind. I'm breaking in here.
No, I'm just seeking clarification. Did I hear you correctly? I'm trying to take notes at the same time. You said 90% of those that retired in Canada are retiring in poverty. Is that correct?
Ingun?
Yes, yeah, those are statistics. And I think what I heard last week, it was that 25% worldwide is still okay when they retire. But you know, when retirement was invented, was recreated, we were supposed to live another 10 years after 65. Now the chances are that we live 30 years after 65. So that means that the retirement fund that we have been creating is not for 10 years, but it is meant for 30 years. I don't know about your retirement fund, but mine is not sufficient. So now they talk about, you know, retirement at 66 and 7 months, and then next year 66 and 8 months, or something like that. I hope I'm not really confusing things here, but I think that we have to decide now, each and every one of us, that we retire at 75. And we can do that, you know, step by step. And there's all of different ways to do that, but we just cannot afford the government. So our government cannot afford, our whole economy cannot afford to let people retire at 65. And the retirees, they cannot retire at 65 because they just don't have the funds.
It's a bit like what Tatiana said, with the societies changing and people living longer. And as you said, like also another way, if I can, but it's also that people, when they work, of course, the national insurance contribution will continue. And therefore also there will be more money for state pensions as well. But yeah, they're quite shocking figures, but yeah. Thank you for clarifying, Ingun.
Thank you.
No problem. Vince, would you like to say something about as you just mentioned in the first question, that it's also a bit about ourselves, how we are open-minded and are willing to change. But what else do you think is needed from society and to change the perspective of the aging population?
Well, Ingun mentioned about pensions. I think that's a big factor here, because if you go historically, pensions were based on final salary, And that has changed over the last few years. And a lot of the reasons for that are that companies suddenly found that they didn't actually have the money to fund final salary pensions. And certainly in the UK, if you were asked to only live on the state pension, that is not a lot of money. That is, well, I'm currently getting it, right? So, 'cause I'm 67 now, but it's about £700-800 a month. Okay, not a lot of money if that's all you have to live on. So historically, people lived on final salary pensions, but that's changed. And I think this thing about actually, if you go on the continent, it's a bit different. So you go to Italy, my homeland, my other country, the state pension there is equivalent to what I would get from a company. So, and historically, those pensions abroad tend to be higher than here. So I think the pension thing, the government has sort of got into a bit of a hole here. Its only way round it is to keep increasing the age, because it thinks, oh yeah, you're going to live to 80, 90. So I'll increase the pension age to 65 plus 70, etc. The problem is that state pension is still not enough, even if because if you're going to live another 20, 30 years. So I think what's needed to change the perspective is that people like us and organizations need to be lobbying government, need to be working with employers to show what value we bring to the workforce. You know, if we suddenly took away some of the older people working, for example, at Tesco's, it would shut down. If I go to my local Tesco's, it's mostly older people actually on the checkouts. Why is that? Because they found that actually older people probably have better communication skills than perhaps younger people in dealing with shoppers, right? Now, I'm not saying we need to do something with the younger generations need to get on the start point for a job. So it's very important they come in. But actually, older people bring huge amounts to the workforce, and a lot of those are people, what I would call people related skills, communication skills, empathy, dealing with others, things that that you and I have learnt over many years. So I think there's a lot that we can do around that, and I think in doing that and working with the government and organizations and all these other people, I'm sure we'll be able to change the view of how we are viewed in society. The more we do for society, the more society will see that actually we can do a lot in society, and things don't stop at the time when we reach 50 or 60 or 65. Quite the opposite. We know so much more at that age. We can actually bring more to people. So I think that's the way we need to do it. We need to have a positive mindset, working with organizations, and not just assuming that, oh yeah, people aren't going to listen to us because they'll perceive us as being too old. It's what value we bring to society that we need to focus on.
Thank you very much, Vince. I think, Tatiana, I think you're last but not least in giving some
how can I add anything? No, this has been wonderful. I think Ingun and Vince touched on very important points in terms of changing the perceptions. When we look at government is aware. Here in the UK, in OECD countries, we're all aware of the need to change the mindsets, the need to create more flexible working environments. And this is one of the things that, again, is the society is changing. The ways that we do things haven't changed as fast. And one of them is the way we work. So there's no flexibility to the workplace. And now, just this week, it's been announced that you have the right to request flexible work from your first day in your job, as soon as you get employed. And that's a step in the right direction, because we don't need to all work in the same way. We can have different arrangements that suit us, our personal life, our health, our energy levels, our interests, and the things we want to do. And if systems and organizations are more flexible, then we are allowed to be working for longer. I wanted to make a quick parenthesis here on work, because I think it's a very important point to make, is that work and paid employment is not necessarily the same thing. A lot of people over 50 work, they work really hard, they have caring responsibilities, they give back to the community, they volunteer, they do all sorts of what we say it's work, which is very important, but we don't see it because we tend not to value when there's no monetary value figure attached to it. And I think this is a part of the change as well. Once we start recognizing the work that everyone, especially over 50s, do for free for all of us, then the mindset will start to change as well. So I think that's a very important part of that.
Yeah, and I think, Tatiana, specifically in the UK, if I may say that, volunteer work is as important as paid work, and also for on your CV, but also for your mental health, your stimulus. So I think that's a very good point. You mentioned that as well. And yeah, I think there's still a long way to go, but yeah, the more positive examples we share, and the more, yeah, let ring the bell and make the noise. I think that's definitely going to help as well. So thank you for that. But people, my apologies, everybody. I did not see you in the waiting room because I was trying to juggle the panel as well. So my apologies. If you have any questions, and for everybody else, please put it in the chat or raise your hands. That's fine as well. So I think it's interesting because we talk about how we perceive the over 50s or the older adults, as we like to talk about, instead of just giving age a number. So how would it will change within the 5 to 10 years? Because we had a discussion before starting this this panelist discussion amongst the three of us. Would it be different when the generation, I'm 53, so if in 10 years time I will be in my 60s, but the millennials will then be around 50, but they've grown up by already using a computer, got introduced in having a mobile phone / smartphones. So would it be then normal to be over 50 and still having a flourishing career? It's a bit like future, looking in one of those, like the crystal balls. But that would be quite interesting. And maybe I'll start with you, Tatiana, on that one. What your opinion is on that?
Well, I think that one important thing to say is ageism and the ways we do things is not a generational thing. So whether we're baby boomers, Generation X or millennials, that won't be the change. I think largely the change is the movements like this meeting we're having today, like Wize Move Society. All these initiatives are bringing awareness of the importance of participation. So individuals themselves feel inclined to participate and put themselves forward and show they're flexible, like Vince said, not living on past glories and wanting more out of life. That's one aspect. The other aspect, which again, we all been noticing in many countries, definitely in the UK, that's the case, is we're starting to hit a labor shortage. There's not enough people to work. You look at healthcare is suffering massively because there's not enough people to work. And again, the market will move in a way to change that, because the needs of the economy of employing people will force employers to change and become flexible, as I said before, and therefore will encourage more people to come in and participate and be employed the way that suits them. So I think there's a bit of a shift of mindset of individuals themselves that will happen over time. And I think the economy itself will start really be calling for people to stay on board and stay at work. And I think that is going to be a very strong force for change in terms of perceptions of older adults.
Hey, thank you very much, Tatiana. Vince, what are your ideas or perceptions on this?
Yeah, I've written down a few things here. I think if you look at the generations moving up, they are clearly much more tech savvy. I mean, you only have to look at LinkedIn, right? And I work in exec search part-time. Exec search, if you were reaching out to current executives and board members, most of them are not on LinkedIn. right? If you look at the people coming through now, they're all on LinkedIn because they've been brought up with LinkedIn. So what you're seeing is a generation coming up who are far more tech savvy, and you need to be, because actually the world is about tech today. It's about technology. So you need to adapt to it. That's one point. I think the second point I would make is that my generation, it was probably, if you go back years, it was about a job, possibly a job for life. But it was about careers in straight lines. Okay. Now it's less about careers in straight lines. It's about jobs. And in fact, careers are zigzags or lattice careers, whatever you want to read up about that, if you go on Harvard Business Review. So it's about jobs now. People are a lot of the younger generations are maybe less concerned about the historical career pyramid or career ladder, and are much more interested in an interesting job. And I think that will probably continue. And the third aspect I would say is about the rate of change. So the younger generations coming up will have been subjected to rates of change much faster than I would have experienced at their age going back many years, which obviously I need to adapt to because I'm dealing daily with people in that age group and younger. And you've got things happening now that you might not have happened before. For example, my brother-in-law decided to change from being a journalist to a lawyer in his 40s, 50s, right? You've got people, I know somebody who was 50-year-old who decided to change from, I think it was finance to medicine. They're now a doctor, right? So if you go back years, that would never have happened. Things would have been a traditional career routes. Now, there are opportunities for people to reinvent themselves. And for me, that's an absolute key thing that our generation needs to do. We need to continually reinvent ourselves because the world is reinventing at a fast pace and we need to move with it.
In the chat box, someone reminded also Vince about all the people having people skills. Do you think if you then see the change of the generation coming up, you said like you have to be tech savvy, where do you think the communication, the knowledge of the older people, so to speak, how would that work? As you said, like people are used to change, but there's also something valuable about people who are used to work longer in a generation, understanding better the culture. So you know a little bit more about what the values are after all the generations. So how would that be then for the other people, let's say the millennials, the older millennials getting older?
Well, Ingun and Tatiana probably will comment, I'm sure, very well on this. I deal every day with people who are younger than me, okay? Whether it's school students, university students, early career, mid-career executives, right? The whole span. And I spend an awful lot of time, and I'm happy to do it, with the younger people on improving their communication skills. How do you deal with people, right? And a lot of that is about active listening. It's about listening as opposed to answering a question before they've even sort of said it, right? It's about active listening. It's about empathy. It's about understanding. I spend an awful lot of time on that, as much as I do on helping them with develop some idea of what career they want to go into. So you're absolutely right. And maybe that's an area that we can put more effort into. If we have those skills, it's our job, in my view, to impart those skills on the generations coming up. And I'm sure we can do a very good job in that area.
Okay, thank you very much. Over to you, Ingun.
Yes, well, I like what is already being told, but I was thinking of the book that Linda Gretton wrote, The 100-Year Life. And that is about a generation, the kids, I always call them, anything younger than 30 is for me is the kids. They, like the chances that we are to live in our 90s, but the kids, the chances are big that they live into their hundreds, that there will be centennials. Linda Gretton also describes, because of tech and because it changes so rapidly, it's exponential, we will have to change careers. They will have to change careers every 7 years. Really change careers. You know, the kids now at university or, you know, getting their education, they're being educated for jobs that probably don't even exist anymore after 7 years or after 10 years or 14 years. So they really do have to reinvent themselves. And you see that already in those younger generations, that they are from the start, they're busy, you know, okay, so this is what I've been doing, so let's do something else now, and taking that really seriously. I see that with my own kids. You know, my oldest is 34 and the youngest one 31. They both change careers completely, and I love that. And again, very seriously, doing so, taking the new education and training and having business coaches and things like that, that is, for them, is really the way to move forward. So I think that they are already used to this, what is happening. Not one of them, the two, not talking about, so I'm going to do this for the next 30 years. They don't even think about it. And one of my son-in-laws, well, he's a flower, how do you call it? A grower. He grows flowers.
Florist.
You know, flower area in the Netherlands. So he's a farmer and he grows flowers, tulips and things like that. So I thought, well, you know, he's going to do this for the rest of his life. But then we were having a meeting, the get together with the family, and he's now 32, and he was already sharing with us that the way they do this right now, he cannot keep up with it. You know, it's really successful right now. They're doing fantastic, but he is already thinking about, what is my next step? And this is a family-owned business that has been going on for so many generations, but he's thinking, this is not possible to continue this for the next 20 years. So he's already thinking about, what will my next step be? So it might be something with flowers, but then in another role. So they're very creative. And the thing is, if I look now at the 50s, the people who are in their 50, 60, if you're 51 right now, you will probably have to work another 20 years. That means now reinvent yourself in 7 years, and again in 14 years, to really keep up with what is going on. And that flexibility, that mindset, I think for the younger generations, it comes already more naturally because they are used to that fast speed of change. But our generation, the 50 plus, they really need to be aware that this is not going to be the only change that they will have to go through. It will probably happen 2 or 3 times more. Yeah. And that exactly. Is something we're not used to because, well, you know, I graduated many years ago. But anyhow, we only have one friend that graduated at the same time we did, who stayed with his company for 40 years. One.
Yeah. And I think that's a bit like the generation before. You moved around within the same company, but you stuck your loyalty to an organization, which that loyalty. And I think they're also used, I said, to change, but also changing jobs. Companies go bust and things happening in society, so they have to change as well. Yeah, thank you, Ingun. Tatiana?
I agree with Vince and Ingun. I can see that the careers changes over the years will accelerate, and we say that even not only one career, we might see people having 2 careers at the same time because of the side hustle that's been emerging and so on. So we can see that coming and changing as we go along. So how does that translate into what's going to change in 5 and 10 years? I think is people give themselves permission to change and to move on. And as it becomes more normalized, employers and people, they are buying services will be more comfortable with that change, that move from industries or roles or jobs and so on. One of the things that I would like to see in the future, and that's on my wish list, is more initiatives of support. So people can do that in a way that they feel safe, they feel comfortable, and they feel confident that they can complete the transition as they move on. Because lack of confidence can really be problematic for someone to launch themselves into something new and succeed in that sort of endeavor.
I think that's a really good point as well, Tatiana. And I'm not sure if everyone who's on the call is aware, but there's more and more senior apprenticeships, and you can also have like taster days. So to see, for instance, if you want to set up your own cafe, I'm just mentioning something out of the blue that you might not have done that before, but there are possibilities to literally to find out more about the trade, having an apprenticeship for career change. And before it was only accountancy and a bit of the energy, but apprenticeships are everywhere. Even in career, you can now do, for instance, an apprenticeship, because that's my background. I'm a career coach. As some of you might know, not all of you, but that's an interesting one to see, that before you had to go to academia, but nowadays, depending on your background, you can do loads of apprenticeship. Kijario, you've been very active in the chat. Just to let you know, you actually only, I can see them. So if you want to change it for everyone else to see. But a few things he mentioned, that is about transferable skills, like people skills. And I think that's definitely a very important one. What are future-proof skills we all need to have. And that's, thank you for mentioning that. Is definitely true. And he said, like, it will be about having various threats to your employment. A number of smaller roles adds to variety and stimulation. I think that's definitely true, as Ingun already said, like in a portfolio career, and Vince mentioned as well. And I do also work with students. It's very normal to have a few jobs, sometimes even 2 jobs, instead of having to choose. They literally run them side by side. So it's not all about the 9 to 5 anymore. And specifically with what happened with COVID, we can work anywhere, anytime, so to speak. Okay, so if anyone has any comments or questions, please put them in the chat. Make sure you put it to everyone so we can all see the questions. I will continue to, I've got a question, yeah, from Astrid to the panel. How do you support yourself while you're doing that apprenticeships, retraining? Is there any, maybe Vince, is that a question you could answer from Astrid?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. Well, first of all, you need to be talking to the organization that you're planning to do an apprenticeship with, to see how they might be able to support you. I believe there is some support through the government. I also think that you could probably do some other work to actually raise some funds. So you could do some part-time work. You could also talk to your bank manager, I think, to see if you could arrange a loan. I mean, I know, for example, it's a different situation, but a lot of the MBA students that I deal with get the money they need through a bank loan, and then they're paying it off after a few years. Hopefully they've got a much better job at the end of it. So I think there are various routes to help support. You may also, of course, have saved some money over time as well. But I agree. I think apprenticeships is a potentially a very, very good way to go, and certainly should be looked at more.
Yeah, Astrid, if you Google it, I think I don't know on the top of my head, but there are some associations. And I know, for instance, my husband works in pharma. They also have apprenticeships there in the supply chain area, and they are paid. I'm not sure what the wages are, but it might be an interesting one to dig a bit further by doing some research. So I think it depends on where you do the apprenticeship as well. Okay, so someone, sorry, Astrid said as well, I have multiple qualifications. I had to pretty much self-fund it. This is why I'm broke, because I'm getting close to retirement age. And that's also maybe, Astrid, why you're probably looking to continue working, if I did say that. Is that correct? You're quite happy to unmute yourself, Astrid, if you would like to say something live, if you're happy to do that.
Yes, well, I mean, I think I've always had the kind of feeling that I probably have to kind of work until I'm at least 70. But I mean, I guess with COVID, I'm not even sure whether there is going to be enough work there. Never mind kind of people skills. One of my qualifications is as a therapist, so, you know, people skills and so on. But I kind of find, I don't think, I'm kind of very on the other spectrum of you. I'm kind of very pessimistic about it all. So I don't think there is, you know, enough work there. Maybe some people kind of, you know, either kind of in sort of IT professions, or, you know, or really or the other end kind of people who kind of want to actually work in a supermarket or want to become delivery drivers and so on and so on. But I think there's going to be a vast majority of people sort of in sort of like middling professions, if I might use that expression, who actually find it's going to be very difficult to find anything. I think over the next 10 years with kind of automation and everything, I think we you know, we don't know what's coming. We're already seeing some bits kind of now with all these kind of, I just read earlier today about kind of, I guess of use of robots and automation kind of in whatever, you know, all the kind of supply chain, you know, haulage and so on and so on. So I think it's going to be, we really need to kind of, get our skates on and find something. To be honest, I've kind of, my conclusion of the pandemic is I'll just have to kind of, you know, use all my skills, you know, stuff, skimp as much as I can, save as much as I can, and just kind of, get money from all sorts of resources. I think, you know, from work, it's going to be, I think, less and less. And whether that at some point might lead to something like universal basic income, I don't know. But I'm kind of, I think all our kind of, so I don't want to be, it sounds like when I'm like really having a go at you, but I don't mean to, but I'm just kind of thinking we need to be really, we really need to kind of, really kind of be very, sort of bracing ourselves a bit really of what's coming.
Yeah. Does any of the panelists like to give a bit of a positive view on what Astrid, thank you for sharing this, Astrid. That's very open and honest. Any of the panelists, Tatiana?
Yeah, I'll jump in. Thank you, Astrid, for sharing that with us, because I think that's a very sobering situation. And the reality is we've seen a big impact of COVID on unemployment, and unemployment of people over the age of 50 is still high. If you compare to general population, is much higher, and there's a lot of difficulties in coming back to the job market. I agree with you. There are jobs available, but what jobs are available there? And that's why it is so important that we have forums like we have now, because this must be more support from government, from organizations to get people back on track, because there's just no other way unless the society comes together and organizations, government, and people come together that we will overcome that. But what you brought here, it's very well documented, and especially if you move away from the very senior positions or professional positions, the ones that squeeze in the middle are the ones that are struggling the most. So the very unskilled worker, they have the hardships of the unskilled work, but there's jobs available. The professional knowledge economy, managerial, there are some jobs available. Actually, the statistics shows that they tend to retire later because they can stay on at work, or they retire early because they can afford just to go. But there's the middle bit where there's all sorts of experiences going on, and they easily get overlooked because it's not the extreme. It's not the one that's doing really well or the one that's doing really badly. And those experiences are important to be brought to awareness, so more support systems can be put in place to help people go back to work.
Thank you for that, Tatiana. Ingun or Vince, you like to say something to Astrid?
Yeah, I've just put my hand up. I mean, we've had situations a little bit like this before when the shipbuilding industry disappeared. there was a whole bunch of workers who needed retraining. And in fact, the government introduced some measures to do that. But a lot of it, of course, is on the onus is on the individual to have the positive mindset to be able to adapt to change. And that's not easy if you've been in shipbuilding for 35 years and then somebody says shipbuilding's gone, what are you going to do next? It's a bit like what we had with the coal industry, and we're probably going to have with the oil and gas industry as well, because that will go and we'll have all the renewables coming in. So I think a lot of it, you know, coming to Astrid's point, a lot of it does depend on, I suppose, on yourself going out there and actually perhaps looking at some of these new things that you have to get involved in. For example, data analytics. There's a lot of it, a lot of business now is about data analytics. It's about coding, it's about AI, it's about robotics. Very hard, I know, to pick that up many years after you've been using other technologies, but it's a key area, I think, for us, that we're going to have to be able to do that. There's a question there about project style working. I think, yes, that's an avenue. We can certainly get involved in more projects going forward. And in fact, this is back to this this portfolio where you're involved in multiple projects. So you might be involved in 1 or 2 days a week doing projects for some organization, and then you're involved with another. Perhaps you're doing work with a charity, which again, that work may not be paid, but brings you a lot of self-satisfaction, which is very important. So yes, it's not an easy answer to this. It's a combination of government, organizations, and the individual themselves, I think, that will be able to get to make it.
I think that's a really important one, and I think we could actually really expand on this, like IT outsource and the 0-hour contracts. But I think then we get really very much into the detail, where I think I would like to bring it back to how or what we can do as the over 50s ourselves, and a bit of creative solutions to stay within the theme of the Aging Well Week as well. And as Finn said, there's a lot also what we ourselves can do. But I do agree, government, society, and organizations as well, like taking on more people, give the older people a chance to reskill, upskill, should be normality and not an exception, so to speak. I would like to go, Ingun.
Yeah, I just want to add about that creativity, because, you know, that is what I am. You know, don't wait and to see what others will bring you, but. And I love the example, for instance, and I think it was in the UK, that there was a lot of issues about not being able to hire people for restaurants and bars and things like that. And there was really a shortage. And there was an older group of people, I think it was 10 people, they gathered and said, okay, let's step in and solve this issue. So what they did, they just offered, okay, so we're going to step in, and when we're not experienced cooks and you know, but we do want to support you. And they did that, and it has been a great success. And at first they started, you know, I don't want to be paid. The payment was being offered to some kind of good cause. So that was great, of course. But in the end, they were so valuable to these restaurants, and so that in the end, they also were hired. So it's also looking at what is going on in society, how can we step in, and how can we create our own opportunities, because there are many, and maybe you don't see them right now, but they can be created, and that is very important. That is also, of course, in the theme of today, that creative mindset, that innovative mindset. It is not about waiting to see what will happen, it is making it happen. And one of the things I want to add on that apprenticeship, and that was something I saw a couple of months ago on what's happening in Japan. And that's not a UK, I understand, and it does not solve the issue right now. But what companies did there, because they are aware of the situation, they create a fund. So for instance, if someone wants to take a year off to learn, or to do an internship, or to learn a real new things, new skills, they have put the money aside, so the salary of that person aside into a fund. And that person can use not 100% of that salary, but part of that salary, they can use it to do really creative things with it, also start businesses, do all kinds of things, learn, go back to university, go back to school, whatever, but use that fund to do that for 1 year. And that is, some come back, some don't, because they do start their own business. And that is fantastic. You know, also for that organization, it is okay when someone doesn't come back, because they really supported that person. And I love that concept, you know, putting that money somewhere and helping people take the next step in their life and really giving them a year the opportunity to create their next step.
I think I see those type of initiatives more, Ingun, like a half year breaks. You see it's, and this is of course different industry, like the consultancy, they quite often after 2 years send people away to do an MBA, and they might come back, or they might be headhunted, but they give the opportunity. And I think that's something in organizations in general. We should not be afraid to invest in our people, and they might go elsewhere, but the same thing might happen. It works both ways. So yeah, I think it's a really good example. I think Japan is a good example because it's such an aging society. What they're doing, we can learn from them as well. Yeah, so we already touched a little bit upon it, what you said, Inge, what can others themselves do to change their expectations of how they're being valued in society? Any other tips from you, Vince?
I've written a few things that I think we can all do, or have, and not in order of importance, but just as I've written them. Positive mindset, absolutely key in my view, absolutely key. My experience is that the people who are negative about this whole thing, you know, they'd lost their job, and unfortunately the negative ones portray the negativity to other people, and other people don't want to see other people being negative. They want to see them positive. So I believe very strongly a positive mindset with a willingness to adapt to change. And coming on to another thing on this adapting to change is you need to get up to date. When I left, effectively it was Exxon Mobil, I was 51. I'd been in the corporate world for about 30 odd years. When I got out, the world was totally different, because I was in a cocoon when I was in Exxon Mobil. I was in a cocoon. Things worked a particular way. When you get out, you realize things have been moving at a very, very fast pace. So the nature of CVs, the nature of social media, you know, you just didn't do that when you were in a corporate. It was all internal. External, you discover there's a whole new world. You need to get up to date with it. So I've got things like technology, understanding the new technologies, realizing that you need to develop some of your skills. Big area, networking. Networking for me has become the most important thing in my career over the last 15, 17 years. And that is something, a message I try and get over to the people I work with. It's the most important part, developing a career. It's about developing networks. And again, I probably had some networks when I was in my corporate career, but whether I use them.
What are people, Vince, and of course we know each other because we work together, but for people who are shy or with the word networking, their hairs are already like, oh God, I hate networking. Do you have any tips for people who are not natural networkers?
Yeah. Well, a lot of people think, oh, the only people who network are the sort of extrovert, outward going. It's nothing to do with that at all. It's actually more to do with developing relationships with people. You can be total introvert and still develop fantastic relationships. So for me, networking is about reaching out to people for advice and guidance and supporting them. It's not about, I want a job, so give me a job, Fred. It's about, Fred, can I have a chat with you about your particular area? I really would very, very interested to get your advice and guidance about da 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 da. And the aim, of course, is that Fred will then pass you on to Janet, who will pass you on to Joan, who will pass you on to Jeff, as you expand the network. And then you find that there are other opportunities, because chances are your next job is not in your circle of network. It probably isn't. It's probably in a second or third level network.
Yeah.
So networking key. Plan ahead. If you know potentially you might be retiring in about 3 to 5 years, I would start thinking ahead what you might want to start doing. And that's what, and a lot of what I did was I did a lot of voluntary work in the belief that that may then lead to potentially full-time jobs or part-time jobs. And that's exactly what happened. I started to plan ahead. I changed career direction. And that's another point. Your career is yours to manage. It's not mine. It's not your friends. It's not your partner or anybody. It's yours to manage. And you don't wait for things to come to you. You go out, you reach out. The other thing I would say that I thought was key for me anyway, was working with younger people. You know, something that really gets me annoyed. I don't know if you get this. You probably won't, Nicolette. You're still too young. You get all this literature coming through the letterbox saying, "Oh, we're just building a new set of houses for retirement just up the road." I'm not interested in retirement houses. I'm not interested in that. I want to work with people. I'm not interested in being just with people my own age. I want to work with people who are younger. So I think working with younger people, they give you energy, they give you ideas, and they keep you with the knowledge of what's happening in the workplace. And I think that's key.
And if I can add on that, what I think is a really important one when you say that, reverse mentoring. So within the workforce, actually team up with a younger or older, and to actually bounce off ideas from each other and learn from each other. So yeah, young people, I do agree with that, if you are, of course, in the opportunity to do so. But yeah, thank you for your tips on that one, Vince. Over to you, Tatiana. So what do you think we can do to change the perceptions?
I think that Vince's list was a great list. So thank you for that, Vince. But I would say, I will add something to that. There's something that happens in terms of stereotypes, and the way we deal with stereotypes is that we tend to internalize it. And actually a lot of studies in psychology are really quite amusing to see how much we internalize stereotypes and we respond behaving in the way that complies with that stereotype. So when people are called old and they start walking slower and things like that. So why I'm bringing that to the conversation, because we have to be very aware of how much we are complying with the stereotypes that are being put out there for us, and how much we are letting those stereotypes actually lead our behaviors that might change our circumstances. So be very aware that all we might be doing is just responding to the status quo. So if we have that in mind, we then have choice. Have choice to say, actually, that's not what I want to do. That doesn't represent me, that stereotype, and what I want to do is something different. And from that point, you can do all these things that have been said. You have positive mindset because you're liberating yourself from that stereotype that's holding you back. And you can start planning ahead on how to change, planning ahead on how to get the steps in place. And you don't need to know all the answers. You can search the answers from other people. You can reach out for your network or the network of the network, because our networks tend to get narrow as we get older. So we have to be a bit more, in a way, cheeky and out there and reach out for the network of our network and extend it. And most people are welcoming of that. So it's not something that is perceived as negative. People do like to connect and to collaborate with other people. I'll add one other thing as well, which is health and well-being. I think that our health and our well-being should be our top priority, because if not feeling okay, if you're not functioning okay, we can't face the challenges. So that is for anyone of any age. If we're working or if our life is becoming too much or getting on top of us, we should stop and think, okay, can I change things a bit so I preserve my resource of my health and well-being, so I can carry on functioning at my best as the years progress.
Thank you, Tatiana. I think that's a very important one. We actually had not even touched upon that. Whatever we all saying here, without a good mental and physical state of mind, your health, then all the rest is actually not important. And yeah, we can't address those things. So thank you for mentioning that. Ingun, any tips from your side?
Well, I just hear Tatiana and Vince mention everything that we are offering at the Wize Move Society, because that is exactly what we're working on. You know, if you look at healthy aging, this is for us is top priority, and it has to be physically, mentally, emotionally. So that is for us is very important. We are working on those networks, and building new networks, building new support systems. If you are in a new phase of your life and you need to take maybe radical decisions, if you keep on talking to the people you have been talking to for the last 30-40 years, they will advise you not to. They will be dream stealers, and they will want to keep you close to them, and that's okay because they love you. But you need an environment that is inspiring, and that is filled with people who are positive, who are active, who are thinking about the next phase. But also that support system, we need to start working on that maybe as well, but also find new friends. There's a lot of loneliness in this age group. Find those new friends. So that is also part of what we're doing. New learning, new knowledge. You need to be on top of things, and not on top of everything. That is impossible. But we do need to acquire new knowledge. We need to reinvent ourselves. Yes. Oh, I see we have this circle, that visual that you see everything coming back, but also that upskilling and reskilling. We need to focus on that work, and whether that is volunteer work, I love that. Whether it's volunteer work or that we're really taking the next step in our career and do those side things, or do that new job, or start a business. This is for us is also, I have that entrepreneurial mindset. I love to guide people to start their own business, to create that, or to get that entrepreneurial mindset and those entrepreneurial skills, creation, innovation. If starting new businesses, actually, if you start a new business after age of 50, after the age of 60, even after the age of 70, the chances are so much bigger that you make it successful than someone who is in their 20s or 30s. So I see what we are doing at the Wize Move Society. And what is most important, to create that safe space, to start working together, to start creating together, to have those people who really support you in doing so. And, that is very important. So, yeah.
I love what you say, support. And I think that's what some people might lack, if I may say. That's how do I start if I want to change. And I think we all experience and embrace change, but it's not always easy. And Keith also shared, which I think is a very important one. I'll just read it from the chat. But it's also a very important issue about self-perception and mindsets. He said, for example, we surely all know of young people with old outlooks and older people with a young view of the world. And I think that's definitely true. If I'm not sure about all the audience, but of course, I know the panelists. We've got we embrace the new, we want to keep on working. But that's how we are. And I can give an example of people who are younger than me, who behave older than me, if you see what I mean. So I think it's a lot of things about perception. I think that's quite a good one to mention. So thank you for sharing, Keith, on that one. I've got one more question. I'm also conscious about time, but we're doing fine. As I said, it's the creativity, as we all know, learning a new language, making music, all stimulation for the brain. Any tips from the panelists in relation to how to stimulate more creativity at work to engage the older adults? So. It's a bit of a tricky question, but I think it would be quite a nice one as one of the last questions, how we can embrace the creativity and at the same time stimulus our brains. Maybe I'll start with you this time, Ingun.
Yeah, well, this is something we talk about a lot. You know, it is what is it? What is that mindset of how do that creative mindset? It is about exploration. It is about curiosity. It is about playfulness. It is about all these things that we actually really have unlearned over the past 40 years, probably. So these are things that we really need to, you know, be curious, you know, wonder while things are happening, and you know, talk to new people, be inspired. And that exploration also, you know, dive into something that you have no idea, you know, it's someone that I work with is really diving into that cryptocurrency. Well, whether you think this is okay or not, you know, this is really something that is new, that is solving issues in the world. I believe blockchain, cryptocurrency, you know, you don't have to do something with it, but, you know, dive into it and try to figure out what it is. Yeah, there's for me, there's a lot of things to open up that creativity. Think about, you know, for me, it comes so natural. When I see a challenge, then problems, some people call it problems, a lot of people call it problems. When I see something happening, I can feel, okay, this needs some attention. But I never talk about it as a problem. I'm always thinking about, so what can the solution be? And most people just keep on complaining and keep on telling everyone why it's not working. Well, instead of keeping, you know, put all your energy in trying to convince people why it's not working, change that mindset and try to figure out or to create a solution for that problem, because it can be maybe a really simple thing that you think of, okay, so why haven't I thought of that? You know, that happens a lot. Why haven't I thought of that? Well, it can be you. If there is an issue, if there's a challenge, I love to call it challenges. Well, challenges are there to find solutions. And that is also, you have to figure out, you have to start that creativity, that innovation of how you can do that.
Thank you, Ingun.
Just some examples.
Yeah. Keith, I see you've got your hand raised. Would you like to ask a question to Ingun or in general?
Well, it's a general comment, really. I mean, I must thank all of the presenters today for the wonderful positiveness that they exude. But you just said it, Inga. An awful lot of people carry a negative view of the world, and they suffer for it. You know, suicide rates amongst older people are massively high because they leave the workforce. They probably don't have enough money to live on. They don't have the skills or the drive or the resources to get back into the workforce, and gradually become alienated. And the consequence is that they decide that, you know, enough is enough. So I thank you all for your wonderful positiveness. But I think we should remember that we're probably in a minority, and that there's a lot of change that's needed. I think teaching people how to have a positive outlook on life is absolutely vital.
Yeah.
And
But we have to start small to get somewhere, Keith, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's at the very root of how things need to change.
Thank you for that.
Thank you for an interesting view of the world.
Yeah. We're not finished yet, so please stay connected, Keith. And thank you for your contributions.
My grandchildren have just turned up, and I've got to go and tickle them and tell them, let them know that I'm still silly and
that you're still there for them. Okay, enjoy.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Right. Vince, would you like to say some last comments about the creativity and stimulation for us, the older population?
Well, Ingun said something and I totally agree with. In fact, I had a previous work colleague, probably one of the greatest mentor I ever had in my career. And he said, there's two types of people in this world. There's those that see a problem to every solution and those who see a solution to every problem. And I honestly feel we need to be in that latter category. We need to be people who see solutions to problems. If you end up going into a new workplace and all you're known as is a moaner, then I don't think that's going to get you very far. I appreciate there are some people who perhaps find it a little bit more difficult to be positive than negative for a whole bunch of good reasons. I mean, I can think of lots of things that happened in my life that I could be very negative about, people I've lost and things like that. But actually, at the end of the day, I think showing a positive persona is a real plus. I think there are lots of things that we can all do in our older years, if you like. I mean, you're probably aware of things like the University of the Third Age, which is something that a lot of people are taking up. I actually have taken up two things since in my latter years. I got into reading more, and I read about ancient history, and I've got really interested in Greek and Roman history. Part of the reason for that is that that's my background. That's my life, actually. I come from Greek and Roman extraction, so probably that's quite a good thing for me to follow up on. And I got really interested in that. I also, going back to, I think, Tatiana's point about health, I'm 5-6 days a week in the gym. And I actually feel health is very important. You can never tell what's around the corner. But I think having as good a health as possible is a very, very important thing. Eating well. Luckily, my wife, who's not here at the moment, but at the pandemic, I actually came back from London to my family home here in Shropshire. And one of the pluses of that, apart from seeing my wife for the first time really in 35 years of marriage, was getting decent meals. so actually, I think that's very important. So I honestly do think it's important that we take new things on, do new things, and try and retain as positive an attitude about life as we can, because I think in having a positive as possible attitude, we will find that doors will open. We will find that the network will expand, and we will find opportunities coming. I truly believe that.
But and some comments in the chat box on that, Vince, that sometimes you should also be allowed to be negative. So it can't always be fantastic. So a bit of moaning now and then, I think it's also healthy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, I could be very negative about some of the things that my parents endured, people that I've lost over time, you know, and those certainly have been negative times in my life. But at the end of the day, I think it's about seeing what you can do, what's the positive you can do in life. Yeah. And in doing that, I honestly believe that opportunities will come.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Thank you. Last but not least, Tatiana, any more comments on the creativity?
Yes, I'm going to just build on being negative and positive. And I think thank you, Abhijit, for that comment. It's very important. We can't fake it, positivity. Sometimes we need to connect with what's negative and explore to be able to unpick what needs to be unpicked so we can go back to a positive mindset. So it's not faking. Is really, there's a journey to that positivity, and I think that journey is important and is very personal and very individual to all of us. And I think on creativity, I'm going to just say that this week I had 400 students joining my program at the university, all the age of 18, and they all come very young and energetic, but they usually come and say they're not creative. So this issue of creativity is very interesting. The ideas we have around creativity are very fixed, or a painting, a canvas, or playing some music. And actually creativity is on anything, on cooking a meal out of a few ingredients in the fridge that we didn't manage to defrost enough things, and we can come up with something, is walking in nature and observing something different that we didn't observe before, is baking, is sleeping, is resting, is doing all sorts of things. So in terms of creativity, there's more than just techniques. There's a bit of living that help us to be more creative. And I think if we live more, we will take a lot more out of life in general.
What a beautiful last word, Tatiana. And I see a lot of heads nodding at what you were saying. So thank you for your last comments. Ingun, you have your raise your hand. Yeah.
Yes, just short, because I see there's a comment from Abodi in the comments. There's a comment from in the comments, yeah. And I really like to react on that. I will be the last one who says that we have all to become coders and, you know, all dive into tech. And this is something that I would leave, you know, and I'm an engineer, I would leave up to those who love doing that. But it is good to get some information about it, you know, and that is good. What is going on? What can we do? How can we use it? You know, my mother of 87, you know, we bought her a new iPad last weekend because she wants to get, you know, that old computer, that huge thing needs to move out of the house, and we've learned her how to use it, and we've learned her how to do her email on it, and it works. She does FaceTime with her great-grandchildren. So that is really fantastic. You know, we need to be able to use it. We need to be able to what they are talking about. And there will be people who will start a course in coding because they love doing that. And for them, it's okay. But we don't have to all dive into coding courses. Don't.
No, and I think exactly, and I think and thank you for picking it up in the chat, Ingun. And I think it's really important, and I think it's been mentioned a few times, that the people skills and the reverse mentoring, and it's not that we have to be like the young, no, please no, but I think learning from each other, I think that's definitely one of the messages that comes across from this session. Also, don't stereotype, and try not always to respond to the status quo. And be open to learn, and yeah, and see networking. Yeah, if you feel like, oh, see it as a conversation, and be inquisitive, go out there and try new things, because things don't come your way. We have to show initiative, and I love what Tatiana says as well. Creative, yeah, creative can be all sorts of things. You don't need to be the next Picasso, but it's also like and picking things up or in nature, or being good in what you do in a different way than someone else. That can also be creative, finding a solution to a problem. And yes, also what's been said, the support is needed from the government. We all need to work longer, and it should not only be, as I think Tatiana said, the people, let's say in the, let's call it the white collar worker jobs, like the office jobs. We all need to work longer, and there should be more apprenticeship, more support, but it starts also with ourselves to embrace the fact we're getting older, but also being able to show positive to society that we are valuable. Any last comments from the panelists before I stop recording and thank everyone? Yeah, Tatiana?
I just wanted to add, thank you for the summary, Nicolette, was wonderful, and thank you for the panel as well. So it was wonderful to participate, it was wonderful to meet everyone. And I would like to say just one more thing. I think we should be a bit more compassionate as well with ourselves and with each other. And if a lot more compassion in society, I think we can only win. And I think there's an important thing for us to acknowledge and put out there. So
thank you very much. Ingun, anything from you or Vince?
Well, a lot has been said, and no, for me as well. The one thing, be you. That's very important. Be your authentic you. That is something that that is so necessary in this society as well.
Thank you. And Vince, last but not least.
Well, I agree with Tatiana. We need more kindness in the world, and I think if anything that we've learned from the pandemic is that by working together in communities and being kind to people, we can actually get through these things. So I'd agree 100% with that. More kindness, more humility, more understanding.
Thank you very much. Just want to let you know that, as I said at the start, it will be shared on YouTube, this panelist discussion. And so if you check on YouTube Aging 2 or Aging 2.0, give it a few days because I can't upload it myself, but I'll make sure this will be available. And thank you again for attending. Hope you all have some food for thought, and let's embrace our age. And again, thank you very much, Vince, Tatiana, and Ingun, for your insights, positiveness, and honesty. And I wish you all a very good evening. Thank you very much, everyone. Bye.